have time to do so. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest, Neil Clover from Ringgoes, New Jersey, who serves as a board member for the Parent and Family Association. His daughter, Marissa, is in her 3rd year at the University of Arizona. So Neil, I thank you for sharing your afternoon or evening with us. And I think we'll just get things started with the topic that we listed, which is travel. Can you share with us some travel tips and anything else you'd like to share introducing yourself?
Absolutely. No, Anna Marie, thank you very much. And thanks for the opportunity to share our UA experience. And my daughter Marissa, as you said, is a junior this year. And one of the things that happened early on was when we visited on Accepted Students Day in 2018, I guess it was. And one of the things that hit Marissa immediately was just how beautiful the campus was. And that, I think, with the palm trees, the weather, and just one of the things that also surprised us was while it's a big school, it didn't feel like a big school from the campus perspective. It felt like a regular size. And we had been to many other schools around, and we always felt, well, it was really kind of way over here, way over there, but we all felt right at home right away. So that was one of the key things I think we picked up on immediately. So one of the best decisions she ever made was absolutely going to U of A, and beginning with some of our travel and how we handled some of these things. I know coming from the East Coast, there's always some concern about how do you get there, and it's a little easier from the Midwest. It's definitely easier from the West Coast if you're coming out of San Francisco and different hub locations like that. So some of the things that we focused on when we were looking at travel, at least I did. So I handled all the arrangements of what we were doing. So obviously one of the best things you can always do as far as a flight goes is try to get a direct flight if you can. It just simplifies things, especially if you have a child that's going to be, traveling alone. And I travel a lot, and it was a little easier for me to figure it out. We had some preferences for United or Southwest coming from the East, but we knew there'd be a hop flight somewhere in there because we couldn't go direct. But suggestion one is if you can find a direct flight from Tucson, definitely take it. That's a great opportunity if you can do it. There's a Fly Tucson a website that tells you all the direct carriers, and there is one that reaches the East Coast, but it's a Delta flight that goes to Atlanta. But that I think would be that would be my first thing to do, is look that site up just to figure out which airlines. And obviously, if you're familiar with traveling and you do a lot of it, you have status. I would always try to fly the status route because you're going to have extra bags that you're going to be bringing with you. And so on United, I get 2 bags and that kind of thing per person, and so that helps. And same with Southwest, they do that for free. But I think those are some of the key things. And then when I looked for hop flights, basically to Tucson, they were traveling through a lot of Chicago and sometimes Houston. So I always try to prefer to fly into, in the wintertime, try to fly into places that are more south than north. It alleviates some of the de-icing delays and things like that along the way. But I think, you'll have a preference for an airline, but if you can go to Tucson Airport, I would recommend that. My daughter loves it. Originally, I flew her into Phoenix, and she took a bus down. We used Groom Transportation, and she used the Flixbus, which we also have those links as well. Both of those were excellent service. They were easy to use, and I felt very comfortable doing it. So we had that set up as well. For her when she was on her own. So we did kind of a little bit of a trial run when we all came out to drop her off on move-in day itself. And I think having those things ready to go just helped in doing the research on it. So again, we have the links ready for those. Another thing that we did was I signed her up for TSA pre-check, figuring she's going to be on her own. She'll be traveling, and just that delay through security is it's a big deal. So we travel out of Newark a lot, and Newark is one of United's biggest hubs, and it's always crowded, and it's always got something going on. So figuring if she was slightly late, or just you don't have to take your shoes off, there's things like that. So we figured for the cost of $100 over her 4 years, it was well worth the investment of $25 a year to do that. So we got the TSA pre-check for her, and we set up the ground transportation. Another thing that we got in the habit of doing is she texts us when she goes through each step of the travel. So we drop her off, obviously she leaves. She texts us when she gets right through security. Then she texts us when she's at the gate. And we kind of just do that. We also have an app that we use. It's Life 360. My kids both don't like it, but they're willing to deal with it a little bit because they know I'm not really worried about where they are. It's more of just certain times I just want to know what specifically they're doing, and so they're okay with it, and it works out well. And you can kind of just see what's happening and know where they are as they travel through. But to be honest, I think we thought about it and we put a lot of effort into planning for it, but it really turned out uneventful on all the trips she's taken back and forth. So one of the things that we also found was I was ready to fly her home for Thanksgiving, thinking about the delay and the travel and everything else. Turns out Marissa was like, I'll see you in December. She was having such a good time. She didn't even want to come home. So her mother was a little bit more upset about that than I was, but we both loved the idea that she was so comfortable. So then she came home in January or December. The other piece was have a credit card, just because that kind of thing is something you sometimes don't think about, but you really do need that. And it's just something that you have there just as any traveler would.
Follow up, Neil, with two things that you mentioned, because I'm seeing a couple of questions pop in. You had mentioned the difference between flying into Phoenix versus Tucson. Can you explain the differences between the two and what the travel time between Phoenix and Tucson? I can answer it, but I want to hear your viewpoint.
No, that's so Phoenix is a bigger airport. It has more flights into it and definitely more direct flights. So you can get a direct flight into Phoenix from the East Coast where you can't to Tucson. It's about a 2-hour drive. If you're used to a western part of the country drive, it's one of those straight runs that's just down, I-10 kind of thing, and you just keep going. It's as easy a drive as you can get. So it's not a problem at all. It's not like you're going through Brooklyn and Manhattan and all these different places and trying to get there. It's a very easy drive, and you can do it either way. Again, we chose to do that at the beginning. At least I was leaning toward that. And then over time, Marissa fell in love with Tucson Airport because it's not quite like the show Wings. For those of us that are older that remember that TV show, it was about a little airport and the people that ran it. It was like a little sitcom, but it's a little bit bigger than that. It's still commercial, but it's just so easy to get through and to. That's why she fell in love with it. So now she's really into the idea of just traveling out of Tucson whenever she can. So we do those connecting flights for her now out of Tucson to get back to either Newark or Philadelphia is what we use.
And when she's traveling out of the Tucson airport, how does she get to and from campus to the actual airport?
So depending on when her travel is, usually she'll be able to get a friend to drop her off because it's a very short ride. So that's always her first choice. Other times she's come in later at night and things like that. We just went to Salt Lake City to go skiing recently. So when she got back, it was later at night. So she just took a Uber back to or a Lyft, actually we use. She took a Lyft back to her where she lives.
Right. Thank
you. And just as a heads up, the groom piece, that bus and the other bus, the Flix buses, they all stop. If you take them from Phoenix Airport, Sky Harbor, they drop you off right on campus. So we have that Welcome to Arbol picture there. One of the stops is literally directly across the street from Arbol, and it couldn't have been easier.
And like Neil mentioned, we will share the links to these resources, Groom and Flix, in just a second. Early in your conversation, you discussed packing and luggage. Can you describe to us what that looked like, what your methods were to get all of her stuff to campus? I mean, that is a lot of stuff, bedding, pillows. Did you move that in a suitcase? How did you handle that?
That's a great question. And we have friends from England who always make fun of it, said, you Americans bring so much stuff in your car, it's insane. And so thinking about that, we kind of planned ahead on some of these things. So one of the key pieces, I think, was to think about the luggage and what we were bringing. Now, my son's a hockey player, so we were able to use some of his equipment bags, which are big, and they're thick, but they compress nicely. So because one of the issues is when you get luggage, you can bring it all out with you, but what they store in the dorms is harder. So having hard luggage that you plan on leaving there doesn't always fit under the bed. In fact, a lot of times it won't. So I would suggest if you whatever bags you're going to leave there with your child, I would make sure there's, they squish down. Or my wife found a Road Warrior bag, which is actually a collapsible piece of luggage. So we used that. We used his hockey bags because Marissa didn't want to keep his hockey bags, there the whole time. So one is collapsible luggage and that kind of thing. Bringing as much as you can in those bags is good. But when it came to all the things for the room, we ordered it through, there's a site that we have a link for. It's OCM. That's they'll deliver all the bedding and the mattress pad. All that stuff takes up a lot of room. And one of the things that we did when we came down from Phoenix that time and we rented a car, luckily we rented a crossover, so it had a taller ceiling, because we picked up the boxes from, we got them from Bed Bath & Beyond that time. Now they don't have the service that they did before, but they still do things. So you could check that out, or you use the OCM, which is through the University of Arizona, which they'll deliver it right to the room, which is the easiest possible. But I would suggest leaving all that stuff to local purchases and not bring it, because it takes up a ton of room, and it's hard enough just with the regular clothing. And one of the other pieces we did with the clothing was we only brought the warm stuff, which makes sense. So coming from the East Coast, you're going to think, oh, we got to have you're going to be into November and that kind of thing. We didn't need to bring a whole lot. And what we did was we brought the heavier stuff out when we visited during family weekend in October. So that really kind of split the load. And it helped that she had a little brother who really doesn't need a lot when he travels. So a pair of shorts and a t-shirt, he was fine. So he gave up most of his room, which was easy. And we didn't have a ton of luggage, so it was actually pretty light because we did a lot of the purchasing on the way. And I think that was the key, is to purchase, a lot of the room things because the bedding is huge. I mean, that stuff is very big, and that mattress pad was very big too.
I've seen, so we have several Targets, several Walmarts in town, Bed Bath & Beyond, and many of them, due to the pandemic, allow people to order on the website, on the app, and then you can pull up and they bring it to your car. So instead of traveling, like you mentioned, they can pick up their items here in Tucson. Great tips on packing. There was another question I had for you, and I saw it pop up in the chat. What did the actual move-in day look like? I know that, so this year, I don't know if you know this, we're hosting a extended orientation, and it occurs during those move-in dates. And so families are concerned that there's not enough time to get their students' items to their room and then attend the virtual orientation. Can you just share with us, what did move-in look like for you and your family?
So what I expected and what happened were completely different. And so, I'd done my own move-ins, obviously, and other people I've helped in different places, different cities. And I expected it to be a little more difficult. So what actually happened? So from my perspective, we drove the rental car up. We had the bedding, we had everything in there. We had Marissa's small, 2 suitcases that with all her stuff and everything else. And these are big bags. We pulled up to the front of the dorm, and they literally told me, do not get out of the car. And so I was like, all right, this is interesting, right? Because this is a beginning, because I'm like, I got to drag all the stuff out. They literally, every door opened, and everything was removed probably in less than 3 minutes. And I mean, everything was. And what they did was they brought moving boxes on dollies, and they put it all in the moving boxes. And the key thing was they didn't want me to get out so I could move the car right away so the next family could get in, right? So it was all logistics. And it was logistics like Disney World, like it was that kind of logistics. So it was really well thought out, really well done. So basically, I just drove away, went to get a parking space in the parking garage, which is like 2 buildings down, parked the car, came back. By the time I got back, they were already in the room, and my wife was already kind of making the bed. And so it was the most uneventful getting out of a car that I think ever. So it was, I was shocked actually. And it was nice because just these things that you think about, and you think about, all right, how much do you know, what floor are you on? How far back is it? And our ball is like 5 buildings. So you think it's this massive thing, but they handled it so quickly and you just didn't even notice. So that was a great experience. And then it was done so quickly that my daughter then was just kind of, you know, meeting people and kind of hanging out in the hallway and that kind of thing. So it was really a neat, just an overall great experience.
Well, I'm sure that it was appreciated because many families aren't expecting the heat when they arrive in August. So I imagine having to deal with heat and moving boxes. So it's nice that all of that was taken care of for you and you just had to drive and park your car.
Exactly. Yep.
Um,
Couldn't have been easier.
I know that you mentioned traveling home and that first Thanksgiving break in November, she chose to stay in Arizona. But is there anything else you wanted to mention that first time that she traveled home alone?
Yeah, so when we think about the traveling alone, so one of the things that we did was, well, obviously that's where so she flew out of Phoenix. So again, we did that direct flight, but she took the bus. So she took the bus up. So when we took the bus, so we just kind of laid out the logistics for it. She knew where the bus stop was. She knew how to go. We actually thought about finding it, which was nice. When we flew into Phoenix, we knew we were going to use it. So we mapped out where that was. So she knew where to find it. But we found out though, you can ask anytime and people are very friendly. You know, Texas and Arizona to me are the 2 most friendly states. And so it was never a problem figuring those things out. So we kind of use that as like a practice. She also was able to get a travel buddy, which was helpful. Which, you know, it's just nice to have. They're going different ways, completely different ways, but that kind of thing. And if you could find that, that's helpful. It's not necessary though, because one of the things she told me about the bus is there's a lot of kids going back at the same time. So there was a bunch of U of A kids all on the same bus going to Phoenix at the same time. So it's those kind of things that you run into. We actually found it a lot less stressful than we thought it was going to be. And again, just because you kind of just thought about how you're going to do it, and that was it. And you know, but I would recommend it. If you can do Tucson, if you could fly direct into Tucson, boy, that's golden. That's even easier, because when I talked about like the TSA pre-check, if you're from Tucson and you only need it for that side, TSA pre-check's probably a waste of money, because as Marissa's flown in and out of there a bunch of times, she usually says that the big line is 10 people in front of you. That's kind of funny. But on the other ends, you know, if you're in Chicago at O'Hare, or if you're in San Francisco at United, or you know, all these different places that are hub locations, the TSA pre-check helps a lot.
Thank you. So 2 questions that popped into the Q&A that I was hoping you could answer out loud. The first one is, does Marissa have a car? Did she bring a car to campus? And the second is, would you recommend a bike?
Would I recommend
a bicycle?
Okay. Oh, that's a great question. Yeah. So the car, although you could have a car at school freshman year, I've always 2 things my kids had to do when they went to college. One, they had to move out. They had to be on campus somewhere. And 2 was they were not going to bring a car at least freshman year, because it kind of, you get tied into the university, the campus much better. That's the way I've always looked at it. She did not have a car freshman, sophomore year. The plan was to do it junior year, but she took summer courses at home, and with the pandemic and everything else, she got delayed, so she didn't have time to drive out. So the plan is she'll get a car. She's taking her car for senior year. She didn't really miss it, because there are kids with cars, and there's a fair amount of folks from Arizona that have cars there, and in other states as well. Some California folks have cars as well, but she will have it for her senior year. I don't think she really missed it. She does like they go hiking a lot in Mount Lemmon and things like that. So for that, it was useful. For the other things, there's campus transportation or friends or things like that. The bike, I would highly recommend. I think It's just, Tucson's a great, it reminds me of the Netherlands. It's flat as anything right there. So you could ride forever and not, break, well, you'd break a sweat because it's Tucson weather, but you could ride forever without killing yourself. And I think that it's just fun. And so she's had a bike right from the beginning. I shipped it out after she was there and settled. So you get these bike boxes, FedEx, UPS have them, and you take the front wheel off and you take the pedals off for the width of the bike. So if you take those two things off, everything folds, the handlebars, you can take off or you can turn them. So it's not very difficult, and it's not very expensive. You can hire a service to do it, or a bike store will do it for you, or you could do it. What I did is I just did it myself and then dropped it off at the nearest FedEx, sent it out. It's less than, to ship a bike is less than, it's about, for us, it was about $75 to $90 or something like that with the box. At some point you could probably buy a bike also there. So that's kind of like what kind of bike you're thinking about and how does that work, but I would highly recommend a bike.
I always recommend that you buy a very inexpensive bike, but an expensive lock. And so those U-locks are great, the steel ones, but I would not recommend sending an expensive bike with your student. Okay, so another topic, switching gears a little bit from travel. Can you share with us how involved Marissa has been on campus and some of the ways that she stays connected?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we took a tour. Ironically, we went to Admitted Students Day on April before she came in August. But so she never took a tour. We just didn't have the opportunity to do it during then. So what we did was we took a tour when she got there. So this is August of her freshman year. So we finally took a full tour then. She loved the tour so much, she got involved with ambassadors right away. And so she was part of the freshman class that got involved with ambassadors. And so she immediately got involved with the tours. So she'll be there doing that for all 4 years. And she absolutely loves that. In fact, the summer she spent out there, she wanted to continue it. And so she did all summer as well. And that's something she really looks forward to and just enjoys. The next thing was freshman year biosphere internship. So she got an internship as a research internship in the biosphere. She spent that however many weeks it was, and she loved doing that. So she got involved with Dr. Meredith's lab, and they were doing a whole, basically it was a drought study in the rainforest. And it was paid for by the European Research Group. It was like a $3 million project. And they sent like 20 postdocs from postdoctorate students from Germany over in the summer. So Marissa became a rainforest climber as well, where she climbed to the top of the canopy, which is like 90 feet up. She also was asked to stay that summer to work with Dr. Meredith with the group of postdocs. So that was a paid internship through the summer, and that's why she stayed. So she absolutely loved that. And what a great, that's like the end of her freshman year that all came to be. She's also in the mentor, what they call the PATH, the Partners Through Honors. So she's a mentor with that, where she mentors, I think it's like eight honors students, and they talk about all kinds of topics, and they meet regularly. She's a physiology major. One of the things she really loved about U of A was there's over 200 majors, and she wasn't 100% sure when she went in, and she chose a major, and she found the major wasn't as it wasn't as heavy science as she wanted. So she's one of these kids that likes organic chemistry and physiology and things like that. So she switched her major, and it worked out perfectly. So that was another piece. And now she's doing EMT certification. So she's going, she's on the pre-med track. So she just got her first level basic life support, and now she's going for the EMT thing. She should get it this month, actually. So it's a lot of activity on campus.
Right.
And she loves the hockey games and the football games. So the Zona Zoo, actually, so what was really funny was the Zona Zoo thing, right? It was either the first or the second game of the season. I was just joking. I said, I'm going to watch so we get to see if Marissa's on TV. And I was recording it, and lo and behold, she was on ESPN.
Wow,
No,
that's
so it was
impressive.
like, it was actually kind of funny. So that happened, and but because they always have the camera on Zona Zoo,
Mhm.
so that was perfect. But she loves the football, she loves the basketball, and her super favorite is the hockey. So it's we're kind of this crazy hockey family. So
Love it.
that's and it's a really good hockey team. So it's they're tops in the nation in the club hockey, which means they'll try to work their way up to the full D1. But actually, I like the club version better. So I think my son has a better chance of playing in that. So we'll
They
see.
are fun to watch. The energy in the room. I enjoy it. So
Exactly.
a few questions came in, and I did want to ask them to you. Do you feel that Marissa is safe being on campus?
It's so we live in a very rural section of New Jersey. It's anything but a city. There's more cows than people. Um, we weren't we had slight concerns about a city in general. We know Philadelphia, we know New York, we know these places really well. Um, when we got there, we realized how safe it really was and how nice it was. That was one of the things. So you have those call boxes like other universities do, and they're all over the place. But
Blue light.
we yes, exactly. And those are a great example. The security is always roaming around. You're always seeing them. And you can get a ride through, like, I think there's 2 or 3 different ways to get a ride if you need a ride beside your friends. But if you're in a spot that you don't feel comfortable, you just call that number and activate it. But we've never had a concern. Once we really felt the campus out, and it's sort of this it's just a nice place to be, and we always felt very safe there.
Thanks for sharing. So just to add, I know you mentioned it, we have Safe Ride, which is the service that what you had just mentioned it. That's what we refer to it as.
Yep.
And students can call or use their app to call for the service if they don't want to walk, from the library to their dorm or anywhere on campus. The other service that we use is called the Cat Tram, and that's free, and it just is on a regular looping schedule. And there's probably 4 different routes. And those will also go to the grocery stores that are off campus, one of the grocery stores closest to campus, and then further away from campus. So the Cat Tram, Safe Ride, and then the third thing I wanted to mention, very similar to Life 360, there's an app that the University of Arizona uses, and students can download it. And if they're walking and maybe, it's a quick walk, but they still feel a little bit uncomfortable, they can invite somebody to follow them in real time to get from point A to point B. And then there's also a few other functions in that app where they can get a hold of our UAPD quickly just using that app. So 3 different services I wanted to mention. There was another question in the chat about meal plans. Can you share a little bit about, did she use a meal plan? Was she cooking in her dorms? Did she do both? What made the most sense for her?
Yep. So it's a great question. So with the meal plan, we ended up going, I think, with the silver plan. It's going back about almost 3 years. We went with the silver plan originally, figuring we could go up or down based on it, and that actually worked out to be really perfect for what Marissa was doing. I think and then that was for the first 2 years because she was in Arbol, and then then they built the Honors Village. So she moved over there the second year. The Honors Village, you get tied in with a meal plan because the cafeteria, which is right in the building itself. So it's very convenient. So that was a natural fit the second year. Third year, she's actually off campus in it's a beautiful townhouse, basically, with the 2-car garage. And I mean, all the stuff you don't think about that you would have in college. So she's in that now with 3 other folks that they're in this like 4-bedroom, 5-bath townhouse. And so that's where she is now. So she still has, I think there were some leftover points or something that she still uses for lunch once in a while on campus, but now they mostly cook for themselves for the most part. But I think she does lunch like maybe every day, every other day or something like that, because it's just convenient.
And just to clarify, and you just said it, so if they're living in the Honors Village, they have to have the mandatory meal plan because there is a dining hall. Otherwise, the meal plans that are offered, the extra funds that are left over just roll over year after year. So they're not losing any money.
Yeah.
So that's, you just said that. I was just clarifying.
Which made it nice because you look at it as a no risk situation. You're thinking, okay, I'm going to waste it. They don't deal with it like that at all. It just rolls over. And so I'd probably put more stress in thinking about that at the beginning than I needed to. And then when she's like, no, and we figured out it rolls over, it was like, all right, that makes perfect sense.
Right,
And
right.
so
the 30 minutes of chatting just flew by. I'm going to ask you one more question, and I know that we've gone over our time just a little bit. Can you just share with us how often Marissa comes home to visit throughout the school year?
how often she comes home. Not as often as we would like, and especially her mother. So first year, her freshman year, she only came home for Christmas through right after finals and through early January. Because the internship and she wanted to stay, she continued right through Easter, did all the things. She ended up staying that summer. So she came home once the first year, and then 1 week before the end of, for the beginning of her sophomore year. Beginning of her sophomore year, she came home again in the winter. And then with COVID and everything else, she came home like around March or so. So probably on average, she's been home once, maybe twice a year. And then this year, we're not sure because she'd like to stay out there, but she may come back and try to do some medical doctor shadowing with some folks here that we know. So we're not sure yet what happens this summer, but I think generally it's been 1 or 2 times a year. It's not a lot.
Well, it sounds like she's thriving here on campus and doing some incredible things. So I wish her all the success. I wanted to address a couple of questions that popped in that I wrote down. For hotels, and where do families stay when they're on campus? Do you have any recommendations? And then I'll share what I have.
So yeah, so obviously if you travel a lot, you probably have a relationship with some of the bigger chains. They're all scattered around Tucson. So I have like Hilton and Marriott. And so the place that one of the places I try to go to in general is either the Marriott right there. It's like right next to the University Avenue or Drive or whatever they call it. There's the Marriott right there I usually try to get to. Or there's a couple of Hiltons, like Hilton family stuff over by like Reed Park. And so I try to stay within, 3 or 4 miles. Some of them, although the Hilton's real nice if you go Tucson East out there, I go out there, but it's a little farther drive. So it really depends on what you want to do. But it's, there were times when she first wanted to move in, we wanted to be at that Marriott because it was close to Arbol.
Right.
It was like right, 6 buildings down.
Stone's throw away.
What's that?
It's a stone's throw away. You can
Exactly.
So close.
So, and that's generally how we did it. So it's, but we've never stayed, and anybody who's traveled to Tucson knows the hotel prices are very inexpensive compared to other cities, and that's always been a surprise. A nice.
And what I will add is, and I'm going to just share the link now. I'm going a little slow on my slides here. The Family Weekend link that's on your screen right now, familyweekend.arizona.edu, has a travel tab, and it has tips on where to eat, where to stay. I also know many families like to do the Airbnb or the vacation rentals, the VRBO. There's a lot of rentals around campus or off campus in that area. There were some, so I'm going to wrap this up really quickly. I'm going well over my time. There was the question, I know it's an individualized question. Each family will make their own decision, but you mentioned credit cards. Did you get her own credit card? Is it your family card?
So it's funny you asked that because we just worked on that again. So I just had a sub card off of my account initially because she really didn't have any credit and it was kind of, that thing. But I tried to get her a card about 6 months ago. So we started working on that, and then now she has we just got her own account. We got the Southwest card because the amount of flights that come out of Tucson airport is bigger, and they're all 737s that they fly. So it's not a smaller regional jet. So we tend to, we got her the Southwest card for that reason. And that's what she literally just got it. So it's happening now.
Perfect. And I know each family needs to sit down and have that conversation on what it looks like, because every student is a little bit different. So as I mentioned, when we first started, my daughter's in her 3rd year, and I told her to go to the bank and apply for a student credit card. And I think that I have faith that she'll be able to take care of that and start to build her credit. But every family has to have that conversation. And if you join us for orientation, or if you sit in on any other sessions, we talk about finances. I think it's a conversation that families should be having with their students before they move to campus. That includes using their CAP card, swiping it on campus. Neil, I don't know if you know this, but students can go in and swipe things in the bookstore using their CAP card, and it goes to their bursar's account. And we have so many beautiful items in the bookstore other than books. We have sunglasses and lots of clothes. So again, these are conversations to have with your student. You know your student best. I know that Neil and I can't answer that. But I want to thank you. I know there are a lot of questions in that chat, but I want to be very respectful of your time. And thank you for being here. There's one thing that keeps popping up, so I'm going to say it again just to reiterate it. The extended orientation that we're offering in August is going to be in a virtual format. And so I think I've seen that question pop up on the 18th and the 19th. Your students will be online attending that. And then I know that the question has come in on move-in dates, so that's in there. I'm going to scroll back to this screen. If you were to go to the link on the screen or hover your phone over that QR code, all of the links that Neil discussed, including Greek life, how to go through fraternity and sorority recruitment, the code to OCM, which was that vendor that you mentioned where you can purchase the sheets, the bedding, everything for the dorms. Neil, you did mention that it goes straight to the dorms. It is a great service. Please be mindful of the deadlines. You have to order your items prior to the deadline, otherwise it doesn't go to their dorm. So just please look for those deadlines. And then I'm going to bounce back to our final slide. Admitted Student Day is coming up in April. We're officially in April. That is going to be in a virtual format. If you live in Arizona, we're hosting a fundraising golf tournament on May 6th. All the proceeds will benefit the campus pantry, which helps to support our students on campus who may have food insecurities. Family weekend dates have been announced for October 8th through 10th. And then about a month ago, President Robbins did make his announcement that the fall courses are moving to the in-person format. So we're gonna, thank you, Neil. I appreciate your time. We're gonna stay online just for a few more minutes to try and answer the questions that are in the Q&A. But again, I wish Marissa and your family all the best. Any closing thoughts, advice, or tips you wanna add?
Anna Marie, thank you. No, thank you for your time, and thank you for allowing me to share the great experience that we've had. And so these have all been great decisions that Marissa's made along the way, and we're just thrilled.